This is Steve Zeltzer with WorkWeek, and this month is the 90th anniversary of the Minneapolis general strike, the San Francisco general strike, and also other strikes, Toledo strike and other strikes in the United States. So it's a very important historic commemoration that's going on. And one of the commemorations is in Minneapolis, and we're joined by Keith Christensen. He's an emeritus professor at St. Cloud State University, and he's been involved with other artists, activists, trade unions in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, commemorating this important historic strike. And they've been having a series of events during the month in Minneapolis and are trying to really bring to life those experiences, those lessons for working people today. So welcome to our show, Keith.
Thanks, Steve.
So Keith, first of all, what was the 1934 general strike?
Well, 90 years ago, the workers of this city got together and said, we're not going to take it anymore. They organized, and they were very creative about it, and they fought like hell. Some of them died. It was violent, but it was strategic, and it was effective, and damn it, they won.
And that strike was similar to San Francisco's general strike in that the government came in, the army was brought in. How was that strike successful? How were they successful facing the armed might of the state?
It's a good question about like how they did it. And it's kind of complicated, but I guess we could start with the fact that it was a time of need. The conditions were bad. It was during the Great Depression. People were desperate. They were starving. But they got organized, and they got organized from the bottom up. What's the word? They had to kind of fight against the International Union for one thing. They had to fight against the police, the National Guard, but they did it with creativity, with discipline, and with strategy, tactics. They organized a newspaper. It was called The Organizer that documented the activities. They had young guys with motorcycles scour the city and stop the scabs and the strike breakers. And they had the Women's Auxiliary support them with the infirmary because there was a lot of injuries and wounds caused by the police. But they also had a cafeteria and full support by families, by farmers. That's how they did it. They did it with solidarity. I think it ended technically after a long battle in August when President Roosevelt sent an emissary with an eye on the election of the fall of '34, saying we've got to end this strike. It's really bad for the politics. And basically the banker said, no, we're not going to negotiate with the dang union. And then Roosevelt said, sent an emissary to town and said, either you negotiate, you settle, or else we're calling in your dang loans. Within a week, the strike was settled. So there was all kinds of complications, but at the end of the day, it was solidarity with the workers and the effectiveness of their activities and the strike. Yeah.
And the employers at that time, the companies said that they were communists. They wouldn't negotiate with communists. There were Trotskyists in the leadership of that strike, anti-communism. And same in San Francisco, actually, where they said the Reds had taken over San Francisco during the San Francisco general strike. That was the headline of the newspapers here.
I know that was it. They thought communists were atheists and they were rioting. Those are the characterizations of it. The newspapers were against the strike, but they had strategy. They had leadership by the Trotskyists, but it was also the farm labor, the liberals in it. It wasn't all 100% Trotskyists. The CP, the Stalinists, weren't much of a help, but the strategy of the Trotskyists, who were very aligned with the workers, even though they weren't aligned politically or ideologically, there was a lot of, what's the word, empathy and solidarity between the guys with theory. James Cannon, who was the leader of the Trotskyists in America at the time, was a big part of it. Vincent Dunn, other prominent Trotskyists. But they had other guys like Bill Brown. He was the leader of the local strike, and he was not a Trotskyist, but they worked together. They worked together for the benefit of the workers and their families. And they had realistic goals, and they achieved them. They didn't go way violent. They controlled themselves. There was reasonable goals, and they achieved them. So those are the lessons, I think.
And one of the things that was the case at that time is you had a very conservative union leadership, Tobin of the Teamsters,
Yeah.
who was against the strike, and also as well in San Francisco, the San Francisco strike, you had the head of the ILA at that time who was against the San Francisco longshore strike. At that time, it was an ILA local. They later formed a new union, the International Longshore Workers Union. But in both cases, you had a conservative leadership, it seems, that did not want at all to have this kind of general strike action.
It was a pattern that the strikers, the workers had to fight against the union as well as they did against the Citizens Alliance, was the group here in Minneapolis that was basically a brutal organization of what do you call it, employers they shut down Minnesota or Minneapolis from having a union for decades. That was one of the biggest obstacles too.
And you've decided in your committee, how did you decide that you were going to commemorate this by doing art and other activities? What made you take that action?
Well, I've been a witness to the anniversary held here in Minneapolis since the 1990s, but I became involved in 2004. And it was actually inspiring for me to see young people have a street festival and a picnic and do all this promotional work around this revolutionary moment in 1934. And we had some hip hop artists perform and a band called The Strike from Chicago. It was really uplifting. And we had art on the sides of the streets and blown up posters. It was really energizing. And so I've been involved since 2004, but this year we planned on having an anniversary of the strike, but a number of us are creative folks. We have artists involved, as well as journalists, as well as lawyers, educators, and activists, and many union members. And not least of all were the descendants of the strikers, and those have been inspiring, those members of it. But it's been a real collective activity. It's been very non-hierarchical, and we've organized this summer to have a number of events. We have exhibitions, we have film screenings, we have a memorial event in Minneapolis at the site of Bloody Friday. And then we have a picnic with speakers from all over the country who will be here. So it's kind of a gestalt, right? The whole is more than the sum of its parts. Can I show you a poster we've made?
Sure.
Here's a poster that the collective made this year. So it lists all the activities of the strike, and we've had support of printing this and buttons that show it costs some money, right? And it takes some support. And we've written to local labor unions and received a lot of solid support, and enough to do the picnic, do the sound stage, pay the musicians a little bit. And I organized an exhibition at the Central Library, which includes 8 artists, including myself. And we have a film screening there. We've had a panel discussion with Peter Ratchliff, a local labor historian. And we've had many people come, and it's been very, very heartening to see that kind of result.
You have in the United States today a labor upsurge. Workers are organizing at Starbucks, Amazon, they're trying to organize.
That's right.
So it seems like young people today are facing a struggle to survive and are facing some of the same conditions where they're fired for trying to organize unions. So it seems that there's some similarities between the struggle then and the struggle today.
I'm glad you said that. The exhibit is called 1934 Now, right? It includes different artists, including one, Brooks Turner, who did this 10-foot tall tapestry that's in the exhibit, and artists from Connecticut are in it. Mike Alowitz, another prominent labor artist, and quite a range of folks and artists involved. So it wasn't about the dead history of 1934. It's about what's it got to do with today. We had a video made of Palestinian protest here in the Twin Cities, and some of the art was about the ongoing protest about the Palestinian situation and the war in Gaza that certainly relates to what happened in 1934. The police brutality that Minneapolis is infamous for, with the George Floyd murder.
And that was a tremendous artistic expression too. They had a whole square there. It seems like Minneapolis has become a center of art and struggle and culture for people expressing themselves artistically about the struggles they face and the issues.
Yes, it's the zeitgeist, right? Portland, San Francisco, Minneapolis, we're in the same wavelength. You know, we feel it and we want to do something about it. And it's more than just one person. It's very much a grassroots effort.
And this festival, so are you happy about the kind of response you've had so far?
It's been terrific. I'm delighted. We've had, as I said, panel discussions and opening and ongoing showing, and people are leaving all kinds of notes at the site, the Central Library. It's a beautiful gallery, and it befits the subject, right? Talking about the history and talking about what it has to do with today, and how we can say something about it, do something about it, and that's where we're at.
And other towns, cities have labor history unknown. It seems like the corporate media don't want people to know about the labor history, working class history. You think it should be expanded to every community, every place in the country?
Yes, I think everyone should be in a union. We need the support. We need to help each other. And then, to me, unions represent democracy. How do we get more and more people involved with shaping our world rather than the billionaires? So, and as far as labor history goes, yeah, there's an appetite for it. I was really heartened by the staff at the library, who bent over backwards, found extra funding to have the support for this, and printed the posters, and have been more than supportive of our efforts to bring about these, to talk about these issues, and to raise the relevance of history, aimed toward effectiveness and effective change today.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much, Keith, for joining us. And I'm glad that it's happening in Minneapolis. And obviously, the connection between Minneapolis and San Francisco is very real. The same year, the same kind of struggle of working people fighting back to defend their lives, get unions, and defend themselves. And I think that link is very important. So I'm glad this year we can celebrate both in Minneapolis and San Francisco this historic event of the 90th anniversary of the general strikes.
Great, Steve. Me too. Keep strong.
Very good. Solidarity.